Talk about your turning point, learn English fast.
Exactly. And when you first hear that title, you think, okay, vocabulary practice, maybe some grammar.
Right.
But what we've got here is a piece of media that's aiming for something, well, much deeper. It's trying to fuse learning English with this idea of personal transformation.
Yeah, the source material actually promises a calm, honest story about a moment that changed everything. That's a pretty high bar for a language lesson, isn't it?
It is. It tells you right away. The goal is two-sided. You, the listener, you're supposed to be learning the language, but also doing some pretty serious self-reflection.
So our mission today is really to unpack how that works.
We want to look at the psychological and, the linguistic engineering behind this.
Yeah.
How is this content designed not just to teach you words, but to actually build your confidence?
It's like an analysis of the blueprint for narrative learning, where the story is the lesson.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's start the foundation then. Section 1, the core narrative hook.
Yep.
This whole monologue is built around one single idea, a personal turning point in the speaker's life. But what kind of turning point was it? Because that seems really important here.
It's everything. When you actually synthesize the content, the pivotal moment they describe, it was entirely internal.
Okay, so not an external event.
No, not at all. It wasn't about moving to a new country or getting a new job. The source is very specific that the turning point was the speaker's own decision to, and I'm quoting here, stop making excuses.
And start believing in themselves.
Exactly.
Wow, okay. That's a critical distinction. It puts all the agency on the learner, right?
It does. It places it squarely on them. If the story was about some great opportunity just landing in their lap, that might be inspiring, but it doesn't really teach decisiveness. This framing, it gives the learner what psychologists call an internal locus of control. It's this idea that you are in charge. So when learning English gets hard, you don't blame the grammar.
Or the teacher.
Right. You remember the power you found in that first decision you made for yourself. It reframes the whole process as an act of self-determination.
That is powerful. And the monologue uses really clear language to talk about that inner conflict. It contrasts, the fear and self-doubt with this eventual choice to improve.
And notice how it ties the two things together. Improve both English skills and personal confidence.
They make them inseparable.
That's the strategic brilliance. I mean, think about the biggest barrier for intermediate learners. It's not usually reading, it's the fear of speaking.
Absolutely. The performance anxiety.
So by tying the linguistic practice, telling your story, directly to overcoming self-doubt, they're basically saying that fluency is a form of courage.
So if you can tackle the internal stuff, you can definitely handle irregular verbs.
That's the message.
But wait a second. Doesn't making it so emotional and personal risk making that anxiety even worse? Like, if I feel this pressure to talk about my profound turning point, maybe I just clam up.
That's a really fair point. But the source seems to have an answer for that, and I think that brings us to the structure itself. The risk is managed by how they build the language.
The safety rails.
The safety rails, exactly. And that's section 2, building confidence through structured language. We're told the episode is intentionally built for success. The English is simple and clear.
Right, with slow pacing and repetition.
All of that is designed to lower your cognitive load. You're not scrambling to understand a fast native speaker. You're focusing on the story.
So the delivery builds confidence, but what about the actual linguistic elements? It's not just simple words, it's strategically simple, I'm guessing.
That's the key. They're not just teaching random vocabulary. They're teaching what you could call storytelling phrases.
Like a scaffold.
A perfect word for it. These phrases act as structural cues, like signposts, so you can organize these big emotional ideas without having to invent this structure from scratch.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The source specifically points out phrases like, I realized, that day, I decided, and things slowly changed.
I see. They're like anchor points in the narrative.
Precisely. I realized signals a shift in thinking. That day, I decided pinpoints the action. Things slowly changed shows the result. If you master just those few, here the story needs the grammar. It doesn't feel like a dry rule. It feels like an essential tool. The past simple is what lets you create the contrast. You use it to talk about the old self, the person who was full of doubt.
It puts a firm boundary on the past.
Exactly. The grammar defines the architecture of your personal change. You're basically turning a grammar lesson into a tool for self-definition.
Which is why the source says the content is emotional, but easy to follow. It lets you practice complex feelings using very simple patterns.
And that kind of learning has to stick. It's not just memorization, it's deep engagement.
And that emotional connection leads us straight into our third section, active reflection.
Mhm.
The emotional vocabulary is very direct. Words like fear, courage, doubt, confidence. It's like a toolkit for talking about self-improvement just in English.
And that's the pedagogical genius right there. The source says that listening to these stories helps listeners feel connected and confident. The goal is to build your confidence through the act of storytelling itself.
You're not just being given the words to describe a struggle.
You're being given the words to articulate your triumph over it. I mean, you don't really own a concept until you can phrase your own decision, your own turning point in that new language.
That makes it feel more real, more tangible. If I can say it in English, then the change itself feels more solid.
It does. And this isn't passive learning. That's the other key part. The episode doesn't just play. It tells the listener to get involved.
Right, it tells you to pause the audio to repeat lines, which is pretty standard practice.
But then comes the most important instruction, the real challenge,
Think about your own turning point.
and practice telling your story in English.
That's the leap, isn't it?
It's a huge leap. You're moving from just listening to actually speaking and creating. But what you're creating is, well, it's your own identity, your growth narrative.
And that connects all the dots. Acquiring English isn't just about vocabulary anymore. It's directly tied to your self-belief and personal growth.
The language stops being a foreign subject you have to study.
And it becomes the tool you use for your own self-actualization.
And that kind of internal motivation is the most powerful engine for learning there is. The language isn't a hurdle anymore. It's the key.
So, to sort of wrap up our deep dive here, the value of this kind of content is in its masterful structure. It pairs clear, simple language instruction, with those storytelling cues and the necessary grammar, like the past simple, with this really profound message about personal choice.
It's basically life coaching packaged inside a language lesson.
Yeah.
It creates this safe, slow environment where the real challenge isn't the grammar.
The real challenge is confronting your own excuses.
Exactly.
Hmm.
If you can choose courage in your own story, then you're also choosing confidence in your English.
That's a compelling conclusion. We've really broken down the blueprint here. But to end, we should leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought.
Let's go back to that core idea. The turning point was the decision to stop making excuses and start believing. So that raises a critical question for you right now. If your turning point is defined by ending that cycle of excuses, what's one specific, immediate first step you could take?
Something small and actionable.
Totally actionable. One small thing in English that would prove to you that your turning point isn't someday in the future, it's today. What small commitment signifies the end of excuses for good?